I have found that when you undercharge your clients, they get less value from your services. So you are actually not serving your clients to your highest potential. So a lot of times we think, oh, this person can't afford me, let me just help out. Guess what? They don't have skin in the game. So they're not getting as much from your coaching. They're not getting the value of your services. They're not truly appreciating the beauty you're bringing into their life. Introducing the Vixen Voice, a podcast for ambitious women entrepreneurs ready to move into their feminine essence, live their truth, and unlock their full potential. I'm your host, April Roberts, and each week I'll be interviewing inspiring women who decided to take a leap of faith to pursue their dream. Women who believe that they were born for something bigger. Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the Vixen Voice. If you are tuning in, mark your calendar for 50 minutes because you do not want to miss this episode. Today, we are talking about owning your worth, charging what you're worth, and we're going through pricing. I get asked this question so often in social media, emails being sent, comments about our episodes. And so this has been a much requested episode. And we have three women here today. They're amazing guests and they want to share their stories and stories of their clients with you. And our hope is that we inspire you to charge your worth. We share our struggles with you so that you know that you're not alone. And third, we just really help you to live your best life. So tune in and let's get rolling and see what we have in store for you these 50 minutes. So to start, we have Kay Sibson, who is the founder of Novapricity. She is a creative business consultant dedicated to helping creative CEOs achieve sustainable growth. I love that term, sustainable growth, through personal intuitive strategies. So I can't wait to hear what she has for us today. So welcome, Kay.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome to have you. And we have Amanda Kaufman back. She was on just, I think, a few weeks ago talking with us about her first year in business, along with Ty Robinson. And Amanda has become a dear friend of mine. We're in a mastermind together. And she is founder of the Coaches Plaza. And in the Coaches Plaza, she works with other coaches in business consulting. And she also works outside of the coaching industry on one-to-one private consulting and coaching. So welcome back, Amanda. So glad to have you.
So glad to be here.
Excited. And last but not least, we have Sara Heald, who is the founder of Sara in the City. And Sara in the City does corporate events internationally. So I'm so excited because besides this, she also happens to be my best friend who lives in Houston. I now live in Nashville and she has events coming up in Nashville. So I am selfishly very excited about that. So anyway, welcome, Sara. Glad to have you back.
Thank you. Good to see you. I'm going to see you more in Nashville than any place else.
I know. Well, I'll be in Houston next week, so we have lots of time. And Houston, Sara's also a member of the Vixen Founders Collective. So if you've been curious about it, who knows? We might talk about it a little today. So, Kay, I want to start with you because it's your first time to the Vixen Voice. So thank you very much for joining us today. And what I'm curious about, I always like to hear, what is a pivotal story in your life that helped create like this amazing, awesome woman sitting here with us today?
Oh, I love that question. I feel like there's a lot of those pivotal moments, you know, the journey is a journey, not a destination. So for me, it's sometimes hard to pick the exact moment, but I think the most current version of me and my business and what I'm working towards and my overall mission, it's really started with booking a trip to Egypt. I was sitting in my office and I had another business at the time, but I was sitting in my office and I was working like a normal 9 to 5. And I realized this trip was like a year out, but I realized it was going to be a really expansive, changing trip for me. It was my first time abroad. And I mean, it's Egypt. Normally,
wow.
like,
So Egypt for your first time abroad, right?
Yeah. And I went alone. I mean, there was a group, but I went alone. So yeah, it was
so cool.
Really big. Yeah, I just kind of ripped the Band-Aid off of that whole going abroad situation. But I was sitting in my 9 to 5 and again, I had the other business, but it wasn't necessarily the business, right? Like the big thing. It wasn't the impact that I wanted to have, and wasn't super in alignment with who I was and where I want to go. And I knew that this trip was going to be pivotal for me, down the road. But in that moment, I was like, I don't think I can go on that trip and come back and sit in this chair. So that's really what started my like corporate exit plan. And here we are, like over a year later. And yeah, I mean, it was obviously the trip was amazing, but I think really just realizing, the choices we make today really affect us down the road and set us up for who we want to become. And I think having that awareness in that moment was really the change, not the trip itself.
I love it. What a beautiful catalyst to change. So amazing. If you know me, you know I love travel, so I think it's the best form of education. I used to say it was the best form of personal growth, but I now think entrepreneurship is the best form of personal growth. But travel is so important, and especially if, like us, you run your own business, you have a lot of balls in the air, it really allows you to like detach from that and get back to yourself. So thank you for sharing that story. I love it. Awesome. Well, as promised, today we're talking about pricing, charging your worth. And here's why I'm passionate about this topic. There's a couple of reasons, right? Number one, most of us started our own business because we wanted more freedom, right? Freedom of money, freedom of time, freedom of relationships, freedom of purpose. And so if we're always grinding it out, we're not realizing our dream. We might be making more money, but where is that getting us, right? So when we learn to charge our worth, we often find that we have more free time because we don't have to work as much and we reach that goal. So that's the first reason I'm so passionate about this. And to me, it's a deep spiritual concept that women should stand in their dignity and ask what they're worth in all situations. And I think it has to do with pricing your business. The second reason I'm very passionate about this is we're all here because we want to serve people. I mean, that's why most women start businesses. Yes, we want to make money, we want the freedom, etc., but we're usually purpose driven and we want to serve our clients. I have found that when you undercharge your clients, they get less value from your services. So you are actually not serving your clients to your highest potential. So a lot of times we think, oh, this person can't afford me, let me just help out. Guess what? They don't have skin in the game. So they're not getting as much from your coaching. They're not getting the value of your services. They're not truly appreciating the beauty you're bringing into their life. And honestly, you're not serving them to your highest potential. So I think pricing is a double-edged sword. And I do think you have to kind of test it, right? That's my theory. Like the market's going to tell you where it should be. And it starts with understanding who your ideal client is and what the ideal product, service, or transformation is that you want to give, and make sure that your pricing allows you to do that. So we're going to kind of dig in. I want to start with, I know that each of you had to deal with how to price your time and your services and your value and transformations you give to your clients. So like I want you to think back to the beginning, like where did that start? Right? Like, what did you first do? Because I'm sure we have women listening who are wanting to start a business and they're like, I have no idea what to charge people. So I'm just going to throw that out there and see who wants to jump in first.
Well, what's coming up for me is that I had a career before I became an entrepreneur. So I was a management and strategy consultant for one of the biggest firms in the world. And that was, at the time, so nutty for me, financially speaking. I was making way more money than my parents ever did. And I wasn't even 30 years old in that past career. So for me to step into entrepreneurship, it wasn't just, ooh, this be fun. It was like, okay, I have 4 kids. I got a minivan. I got house payments, right? Like, how do I make this fantasy, this idea real and realistic given my context? And I think like in some ways that gave me a major shove, because the career I had built before had elevated my income, or my market value, if you will, to like over $250,000 a year by the time you considered the total compensation value of my benefits and vacation and all those wonderful things. And what I've noticed from working with a lot of other entrepreneurs is very often we baseline what we think we're supposed to be paid based on what we were paid before. And that's a bit of a trap too, but that's definitely how I started.
Another key factor would be doing market research and see what your competitors are charging. There's so much information available online. You can find out so much, and not even in a dishonest fashion. Just go look around and see what other people in the same services that you're offering and what are they charging. Just make sure that the brands you're looking at also are in somewhat alignment with your core values, and see if you can tell if they're focused on the same target audience as well. I went through a process with April where I had started my business and was charging an hourly rate that I thought was reasonable and realistic. And we worked on defining my core values. And then we talked about what drives me the most when I'm working with my clients and what things I like the most. And then we developed what my ideal target client looked like. And what I realized is that the hourly rate that I was charging was not in alignment with what was reasonable and realistic for them to charge. In fact, I could be charging more. And so in that way, I was able to increase my hourly rate.
Hey there, just popping in quickly. It's April Roberts, and I wanted to thank you for being a loyal listener of the Vixen Voice. It means so much to me. And because of that, we're going to be popping in these little announcements because I want you to be the first to know what's going on at the Vixen Gathering. So if you haven't done so yet, click the link below and check out the Vixen Founders Collective. The members who are already in are raving, and we would love to have you join us in the ultimate business consulting, networking, and personal growth community for Gen X female founders. See you there. Sara, the one thing I wanted to add is, and you kind of touched on this, but a little more tangible, is don't just look like, okay, everyone's charging $100 an hour, so I'm going to charge $100 an hour. So what Sara said, or the average is this, what are they delivering for that price, right? Because you might be delivering more than your competition, in which case you should be charging more than your competition, right? So if you can see not just what they're charging, but what the client is receiving for that price, because in my experience, people are charging a lot of money for not delivering much these days, right? So if they're getting that and I'm delivering twice as much, how am I going to price myself? And then there's an integrity issue too, to make sure it feels good to you and that you're aligned with what you're charging, because you have to say it with confidence. So thank you so much for that. And Kay, I know you had something you wanted to share with us. So let's chat about pricing and where you started.
Yeah, I think for me, and I think for a lot of women, when they're first starting, it's underpricing, right? Like Sara was saying. And I think one of the biggest things that I had to figure out, and I'm still, learning and healing through, is that just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not valuable. I think as women, we downplay a lot of our strengths and innate gifts. And especially when the integrity is there and the alignment, we're not wanting to charge $5,000 a minute. Like, that would be great, but that's not in alignment, right? So when we're coming from a place of alignment and we are clear on what we want and what we're going for, realizing that that is still valuable and that we have value. And so I think that was one of the things that I had to shift personally was that not only the market research and all the other things that go into play with pricing that I'm sure we'll expand on even more, because there's a lot of things that play into what you actually put out there. But that was one of the big shifts I had to make, was that just because it's easy doesn't mean it's not valuable.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing. And I know, you're just wrapping up your first year of dealing with this. And Amanda and I's episode was spurred by a conversation we had about our first year in business, where we realized we didn't know jack anything the first year of business. Like, it's kind of, and I don't mean that towards you, but like, it's just like you're figuring it out and you're getting your feet on the ground, right? So it's totally normal that you're still going through the pricing. I mean, I just reached out to Sara last week because I have a situation where I'm traveling to a a client for one-on-one consulting, and it's the first time I'm traveling, right? And I was like, hey, how do you charge for your travel time? Because I had to figure out, I realized, like, even though I'm going to be in the city they are in, like, they wanted me at their office for 2 hours, but it was a 3-hour round trip drive for me. And I was like, one, that doesn't feel good to me because I don't want to drive 3 hours to help you for two. And two, like, okay, I'm getting paid for the 2 hours, but not the travel. And so, by talking it through with her and the exercise she shared that I put my clients through, I kind of figured out. And then I reached out to my client. She was totally cool with it. She was like, no, that makes so much sense. Let's do 3 hours and then I'll do this. But I mean, I really wanted to think it through so I could have a good conversation with my client where everyone won. So even when you think you have your pricing locked in, new situations come up where you have to really think through and make sure it feels good to you, whatever you're doing. And then, you got to know when to level up your pricing, right? I'm dealing with that right now on my one-to-one consulting, and I'll share as we go on. But at first you have to get comfortable with the pricing and understanding the value you bring. I think that was so important, Kay, what you touched on, because we basically, as a coach, I get paid to compress time for my clients. So if I can share something with them that's easy for me, but it changes their world and compresses their timeline to success or the money they want to make or starting their business, I've just given them a huge value, right? That should be compensated for. So I love this. This is a great place to start. So I want to ask, I know Amanda and Kay, you both have clients that you've probably dealt with. And then Sara, you've dealt with your own situations. What are some stories like I just shared about when you had to think about pricing, or maybe even you struggled with like, hey, how do I price this? What do I do here? Or a client story would be great too.
Yeah, I love this. I still remember the very first summer in the first year that I was really, really, really doing this. Like, we're making this leap. And I was in the spreadsheet, right? Doing the numbers and then redoing the numbers and doing the numbers. And I think one thing I would definitely caution people against is trying to be comfortable with it. Because if you've never done something before, why would you be comfortable with it? Like, why would you? And I'll never forget this. My mom was actually visiting. I had just had a baby, so kiddo number 4. And so I'm a little tired and I'm a little grumpy, and I'm just trying to make this silly spreadsheet work. And my mom, this is one of those lucky things for me, is she's been self-employed she's had a business for nearly 40 years. And she operated in a very different market, very different business. But she said to me, she just looked at me dead in the eye. She said, Amanda, how much do you have to charge that you never have to go backwards? Mm-hmm. And that was such a paradigm shift for me, because for me, pricing is actually a gateway of commitment. And what it did is it elevated my expectation of myself of what is the level that I'm going to operate at, that I'm never going back. I'm all in and committed. And that scared the patootie out of me, because I was like, I do not know a coach that charges this much. At the time I didn't. And I had to do what Sara said. I had to find coaches that operated at that level, because that became my standard. And I was like, okay. And then here we go. A couple months later, I fired my boss. And it was because I held myself to a completely different standard. And I really want to caution women about seeking alignment too early, right? I think I think alignment is really, really, really important, but growth is uncomfortable. So if you're uncomfortable, that may not be a misalignment issue. That may be trying something new, challenge, and a perfectly normal feeling that you're having.
Yeah, I always like to say there is no money in your comfort zone. So, I mean, you're just not going to get there. So I agree. Sara, you had something to add?
I thought that was really spot on, especially deciding for yourself what your gateway was to make sure that you are delivering in that sphere that you want to perform in. I was on a discovery call with a prospective new client just the other day, and they said to me, well, it sounds like you're after quality and not quantity. And I had to agree with him that was correct. And this person did end up booking me, but it was about letting him know the value that I provide and what sets me apart from others, and making sure that that's what he wanted, because there's a lid for every pot. And if your standards are very high and you're offering these wonderful packages, there are going to be some people that may not need, may not want, or cannot have those things. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. So you have to live in this sort of space where if you get turned down, then that means that something bigger is coming your way. And you don't have to take every piece of business, because if you do try to take every piece of business, even the ones that aren't good fits, you end up having way too much on your plate, and your total world would suffer.
Yeah. I love that. And you have to learn to frame your pricing and frame your offer to put it in relative. I know in my financial practice, it used to be part of my dinner seminar. I had a triangle, right? And you can do this in any industry. In fact, I'm working on it with our current business. And it's like, okay, there's the bottom broad tier, like, in the financial world, that's the big banks, and just you're walking in, you're investing their money. You don't get a ton of personal attention. They're not going to give you tax advice, right? And then if you want those things, you can step up, and there's the next level that are a little more focused, but of course you're going to pay differently for that level of advice. And then at the top are like the boutique wealth management firms that knows everyone in your family, knows your hopes and dreams, and make sure that your financial plan aligns with that. And I would be very clear, like, we sit here at the top, and if you want level 1 or 2, that's great, but we're not a great fit for you, right? So what is a simple way you can frame what you do when having a conversation, that gives people an out if you aren't the match? And you really should have that at your disposal and become comfortable presenting that. And I agree with Amanda, like, confidence comes over time, right? And so that first time, you're going to have that first time you charge that big amount and someone pays it, you're like, oh yes, okay. And then the next time you're still going to feel trepidation. And then the next time a little less, and the next time a little less. And then it kind of becomes natural, and it's not a big deal. And when it becomes natural, you got to ask yourself, okay, is it time to up my pricing, or is it at the right place, right? So I think that's when you challenge yourself. So Kay, how about you? Any stories to share?
Yeah, part of my own journey, but I see it with clients as well. So I had a business before this one, and it was easy for me to charge some of those bigger prices. We were still in the market, but we were probably on the low side of the market pricing just because of our target audience. And so we wanted to make sure that aligned with them, right? And it was easy for me to throw out those numbers because I could tangibly see that work. Like, it was more physical. There was more of a physical, tangible thing I was delivering. Whereas now what I've transferred into, it's me, it's my time, it's my expertise, it's my ideas, it's troubleshooting, it's support. It's not as tangible. And there was a shift in having to make it sustainable for me, like on a nervous system level, of being able to see that value and that worth in myself and what that looks like, and that it does become a tangible thing down the road. But I was hiding behind my product, so to speak, before. And so seeing people try to cram a bunch of stuff into an offer is great, as far as if it makes sense, right? Again, like what you guys were talking about, Sarah and April, it's like, what are other people charging and offering and delivering at that price point? That's great. But I see people almost over delivering, but it's not quality, like you were talking about here. And so just having them actually step into what they're offering, like almost be the face of what they're offering, and have that backing behind them, has been an interesting journey to see with some of my clients. It was just like, what you're offering is valuable. Again, going back to the value side of just because it's easy, but again, not wanting to go too far into the ego of, oh, I should charge X amount because that's what everyone else is doing, but also I'm so great, and if you haven't built up those qualifications, or depending where you are in your journey, it can definitely look different. But I think when I actually had to step into and be like the face of my company, that's when a lot of the shifting happened, and really tackling some of that mindset work and nervous system regulation behind worth and value, and just even the idea that money is energy, right? And so not working for free, like that's not in alignment really, because there should be some sort of exchange, whether it's an actual exchange of product service, or whatever with someone like in a collaboration. But I think that's one of the main things I've been seeing a lot is just when people are actually the face of their company and when that shifts for them instead of just hiding behind what they're offering, if that makes sense. A lot of people, I work with a lot of different like product-based business versus service-based versus coaching. And so I see an interesting mix of things, but I feel like that when they actually take ownership of their business, there is, I think, a shift there.
Well, and also you mentioned people, like over delivering, but the quality is not good. So another aspect of pricing is what's the lifetime value of my client, right? Like not just what they're paying me in this moment, but how can I deliver to a degree that I serve them and as long as they need me and they keep hiring me, right? And then so also adjusting to making sure what you're delivering matches expectations or exceeds them so that they keep working with you and you're able to keep serving them, right? Which becomes a win-win situation. And I love how you talked about money as energy. I just did day 2 of my Own Your Worth challenge, which by the way, if you're interested in checking it out, it's all about this mindset shift and everything we're talking about. Just follow us on Instagram and you'll see we always post when the next challenge is. We're going to change it to a 3-hour masterclass instead of a 3-day challenge. So would love to have you join us. But I just discussed that today. It's an exchange of energy. That's what money is. We have to kind of demystify money. And another thing I love is if you take all the money in the world and divide it by the population, there's like millions of dollars for every person on earth. So when we get into scarcity mentality, like there's not a lack of money out there. You're just limiting yourself from receiving like what you should, right? So we have to like kind of flip that mindset about there's a scarce amount of money because there's absolutely not, and we see it. So, Sara, can I share quickly a story with you? So, Sara came to me when she was starting her business and she said, hey, I want to talk to you. She had gotten laid off in 2020 as a corporate event planner because the event industry disappeared, right? And she was pregnant at the time with her second child. And so she decided to stay at home and be a mom for a little bit. And, Sara, it's better if you tell this because it's your story, but my understanding is that didn't really align with who Sara wanted to be. She wanted some more adult time. So when the time was right, she decided to start her own event planning business. And so she talked to her husband, Chris, and she said, hey, can we grab lunch? I want to talk to you about something. And she shared with me her idea. And I'll never forget, she was like, yeah, if I could just make $60,000, because she really just wanted to like be out playing with adults to begin with. Like that was her main goal. And I looked at her and I said, if you're only going to make $60,000, don't do it. It's not worth it to own your own business. And I don't know if you remember that. And I was like, you need to make at least 6 figures. And she said, that's exactly what Chris said to me. And hey, this is no look. In your first year of business, if you make 60,000, that could be great. I'm just saying it shouldn't be your ultimate goal because running a business is a lot more difficult than anyone anticipates. It takes a lot of your time and energy. So really don't limit yourself. I mean, and I told Sara that and she was like, okay. And then she made 6 figures her first year, right? And revenue. And so I just think that raising that mindset really helps. So Sara, what do you have to add to that? Hope you don't mind me sharing that story, but I love that story.
No, that's okay. Yes, that's all true. So to recap, don't minimize what the toll of your mental health and your time goes into owning your own business. Very quickly, once I started running with the big dogs, I immediately needed an umbrella insurance policy. I just mailed something to the Texas controller today about my annual franchise tax. There's so much behind the scenes that's going on constantly to support all of these things that need to be in alignment, particularly if you want to deal with corporate clients. That may not be the case for every single type of business, but there are certain expectations that go along with behaving in this manner. I will say that my personality is such that because I'm a high achiever, that it often gets away from me. I will run around the world and pick up every single piece of business I can and put it in my pocket. And without asking myself, like, is this the correct piece of business for me? Is this in alignment? And a lot of times I get in trouble for that. Just to share like a drawback of just being this personality and being in this world. And I have to remind myself quite often, like, does this meet your overall goal? And your goals can change every year. You can have different goals, but is this still, giving you what you want out of life and out of your business? And is this going to suit you? Because as April opened the discussion, making an X amount of money isn't necessarily the goal. The goal is quality of life.
I mean, it is risky to be a business owner. There are no guarantees. And, I can't think of a friend or an entrepreneur who hasn't had shockwaves along the way. And, being the captain of that ship and keeping everything going, I mean, your quality of life is so important. CEOs make the most money in corporations for a reason, because it is a lot of pressure. And as the business grows, ideally you want to build it in a lower pressure way. My business now, we're close to $500,000 a year. So, roughly speaking, for the size of the business, that was way easier to manage than when my business was brand new. I think in the first, few months I did about 200,000, and the first dollars that you earn, period, blow your mind, right? Like it's so crazy, I think, because there's so much conversation that is counter to the idea that you should be successful, on any kind of a timeline, etc. So I really do believe that you need to compensate well to make this whole thing worth it. But then also there's an impact kind of a metric on a business that as it grows, you get to have more and more impact. And what's been really interesting is as I've evolved, I went from doing, the $30,000 months based on purely private clients to like similar kind of income, but then being able to impact hundreds of people in a month. And those are very different businesses. And, if I didn't earn, I think when you're owning your worth, it's tempting to equate it to the price tag of a package or a program. And, revenue is equal to price times volume. And so sometimes your impact is going to be because you have more capacity to do things like podcasts. You have more capacity to do things like advertising, more capacity to do things like hiring team to take care of tasks that are outside of your core genius zone. And to me, that's what it's actually really to run a business. I think I help a lot of coaches start their business. And like the first thing that we switch is this idea that you're just a coach. It's like, no, babe, you are a CEO, and there's all these other things that you're responsible for. You get to do.
I love it. And you do have to really define. And as Sara said, it changes what you want, right? Like I've always been like a city girl. And then it just came a point where I was in the middle of Houston, which I think is now the third largest city in the country. And I love Houston, but I didn't want to be in the middle of the city anymore, right? And so when I sold that business, I moved to Nashville, which was still a city, but a smaller version of a city. And, it's 15 minutes to get out of the city. And now I'm really feeling called to have like acreage in the countryside, which is the next part of my life to figure out. And all of these things like sustain a different business, right? And so now I have to really focus more on, how do I make the bigger impact in less time, like Amanda, because there's other things I want to be doing with my time. I mean, I'm really feeling called to like grow things and paint more and like explore my life and not just be working all the time and getting to travel. And so, because of that, we did shift our business model this summer where I'm doing more group impact like Amanda. And the funny thing is, you actually end up getting paid more for that time. You're making more impact. And so now I'm like, well, do I charge my one-on-one consulting clients more, or do I just stop doing it, right? So what that's allowed me to do is be very particular about who I take on as a one-on-one client. Like if they come to me and I really like them and vibe and I love the business they're doing, then I can say yes. But if not, I raise the price and then they're like, oh, I don't want to pay that. And so it's a really nice position to be in. And, because here's the bottom line. The more you like your client and the more you believe in what they're doing, the better you're going to serve them. Let's all be honest. If we have a client that we don't like, you probably should release them because you're not going to serve them well. This is just human nature, and no one wants to talk about this. They all just want to love everyone, and it's just not reality, right? So just remember that pricing is a mechanism that helps you control who your ideal client is as well, so that you can show up and serve them to the best of your ability. So I'm curious, any issues with pricing that you're dealing with now or that you've had conversations with your clients about? Because I bring this up, I think there's a lot of instability in our economy right now. There's a lot of perceived instability. We all know that prices have gone up substantially, and that clients, customers, whoever you're serving are being a lot more particular with where they're putting their dollars. I personally love this because this is when I think you win, when you deliver high value, right? This is where everyone who's commoditized their business is going to start falling out. I saw this in 2020. I doubled the recurring revenue of my financial practice in 6 months because we showed up for our clients and doubled down on service, right? So I actually see this as an opportunity to serve greater and to win personally. But what are y'all experiencing with the current economy? And also, I mean, not just economy, but instability in the world in general right now. Are you seeing this reflected in people being willing to say yes, pay the price, etc., or are your clients?
You know, I heard something that really, really helped me several years ago when it came to talking about things like recessions and economy. Is it's tempting to think like the dollars disappear. And
Right.
that's not it. It's a shift. It's a shift. It's just a shift. And so like in my industry, for example, you know, I'm primarily a coach, business coach. And what's happened is there's been a shift that a lot of technology is way less expensive than it used to be, and it performs way better. And so it shifts a bit what the perceptions are of the problems that people have as compared to before AI was released, for example. So I think one of the things that's helped me a lot, you know, I've been in business for 7 years and consulting for 17. And what I've noticed is that when people start getting really scared, they start spouting a lot of news that's not really researched. So it helps me a lot to sit back and be like, where's money flowing, right? And I just kind of imagine like it's this water current that is moving and shifting. And what's really cool, like so freaking cool about being a small business owner is you're in a little dinghy. You're in this little boat. So you can just like point to the new thing like that, as opposed to like a big corporation. Like they like, oh my goodness, the amount of change that management that they have to do to make even the most simple of changes, and the risk they're trying to mitigate when they're getting traded on the stock market and stuff. OMG, I love being a small business owner.
Yes. So I actually signed my first piece of business for 2025 earlier this week. It's a series of 5 events. 2 of them are in other countries. So that's very amazing. So I think there is a willingness for people to continue with events. To second what Amanda said, my plan is to double down on service, be willing to do difficult things that other people don't want to do, but still align with my values. I'm not talking about like debasing myself, but I am talking about like maybe stretching a little bit and doing things that other people don't want to do so I can provide value, and being willing to have honest conversations if people do want to talk about pricing, weighing elements like, is this a piece of business that I continue to want? Because there could potentially be flexibility in here through an honest professional conversation.
I think for me, when things are slower or it's perceived slower for my clients, you know, with everything's changing all the time, everything's changed, is to not freak out. I think that's like one of the big things, is not to just immediately discount. If we're talking about pricing, don't immediately throw out a sale or create a new offer out of, you know, just out of panic. I think it's I always like a slow time because it's like, oh, what can I tackle that I've been putting off? Is everything updated? Like, is my website actually up to date? Are my links good? Like, let's just do a quick little check here, spend like a week or two doing that, and then getting back to like, okay, where's the money flowing? Like, how can I go with this process and then dive into that quality like all of you are talking about to really show up and be that like, solid, I don't know, lighthouse through this time of transition and change, depending on what type of, business or clients I'm working with. So I think really just not panicking at first and just really like finding that, I mean, security really comes from within, right? And starts there. Like we can have all the money in the world, but if we're worried about the recession or anything going on outside of us, we're not going to feel secure no matter how much money we have. And so I think really just coming back to that, the core values and focusing on foundations and, practical things like making sure things are updated, and then really just assessing the situation and zooming out and being like, okay, long term, what can we really focus on? What little things can we do in the meantime? And what have I been putting off? Or what's calling to me that I maybe don't have time to do, that I haven't been able to do?
I love that. I have something to add, actually, if we have time. I wanted to say that I'm feeling a huge shift away from a time when, there's a lot of different services available on the internet, and some of them happen in other parts of the world very inexpensively, depending on what it is. And I know that I've taken advantage of some of those services in the past year and have been burned. And I've heard from other people that they've also not been happy with what the results are. And I think sometimes, depending on what type of business you have, you might be competing with these other highly advertised things on the internet. And I think that there's huge value in being present and being real and being someone that they can have a personal relationship with, that they know. And I feel like people might try those things once or twice, but then they will come back and they will work with real live people that they can trust.
I was writing down little notes about like, we have this short time together. I really wanted to share this idea of owning your economics. And the reason why that's so important is, for example, a few years ago, I didn't know how to advertise. I didn't know how to do that. I had to spend money to be able to learn how to do that. And like when I think about all the skills that I've developed over the years to be better at what I do and to be able to survive in harder times or when there are unexpected things, I think that's another really good reason to make sure that you are pricing appropriately. And the kind of mental model that I have when I'm sitting down to do strategy is the Pareto principle, 80-20. So if I've established in my business 80% of my processes that are working super awesome, and then maybe I want to get experimental with 20% so that I can develop new capability, build new relationships, get into new environments that maybe I didn't before, but I'm not necessarily walking away from the core of what has been working really, really well. And that I do in good times and bad.
Cool. I like that.
That makes a ton of sense. And if you're familiar with the Colby assessment, I'm a 9 quick start, which means I have endless ideas, right? And so I can be the biggest danger to my business by changing it so much. And thank goodness I learned this about myself over time. So I kind of tell my team, like, okay, the podcast is my sandbox. That's where I get to play and do whatever I want. You can make recommendations and then you guys tell me what to do over here, right? So like, I feel like be honest with yourself. And if you need that creative outlet or you need something like, I've kind of done what you did, like the 80-20 principle. I just didn't think of it that way. I was just like, hey, this is my little part. Don't touch it. I'm going to handle this. Y'all can tell me what to do everywhere else, right? Because when I left the financial practice, I had a TV show. I did monthly webinars, but I was highly regulated as a financial advisor and a fiduciary. And I was like, I really want a platform where I can say whatever the heck I want that I think is important for people to hear, right? Because I was so tired of being shut down. And so like, this is my little outlet. But Kay, what are your final thoughts? We are almost out of time, so I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I just want to echo Sarah that I really do feel like there is a shift in authenticity and who we buy from and what we value. So I think, there's been an influx of a lot of new let's say titles, even mine's like made up, you know, like as far as like, you know, what's out in the space in the online world and the world in general. So, but I really do think there is that shift to authenticity, and I'm seeing it a lot more. And I think I totally agree that if people are actually like conscious business owners, they're going to keep choosing the things that are going to be the best thing for them and not just the quick fix. I think we get sold that overnight success so often, and that's not entrepreneurship. So I think that's a really big thing. And then just to echo also what Amanda was saying, as far as that financial planning in a way of really just thinking ahead. And I'm all about planning for the future. So I like to plan for the bad times when it's good, you know, and I'm like, oh, we got a little extra money. What can we put that towards and put that, you know, have it working for us. And so I think that's really important to like figure out and know, even in the early parts of your business, is like where the money's going, coming and going, and like really have a handle on it, but not in a way that's through scarcity or fear, right? But just like, okay, let's have a real honest conversation about where the money is actually happening. And I feel like, or what's going on with it. And I feel like often when I actually do sit down and look at the numbers, as I do, I feel less stressed. It's like, oh, we're fine. We're actually fine. I think it's like cutting out the noise during times like this, or, you know, as things change and grow. And I think cutting out the noise and really just staying true to who you are and what you are trying to, you know, what your mission is for what you're doing. I think that helps keep everything steady, at least as steady as it can be in this journey. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. And what I like to talk about is like leave the past in the past, right? We live in the present, so don't let it pull you back. And also don't let worry about the future pull you into an unnecessary realm. Like the more present you can be, truly being present every day, these things just work themselves out, right? You know what I need to be doing right now, what's next. And it really is not just works itself out, but it's a beautiful way to live. Like it's much less stressful because we bring a lot of the stress on ourselves. So the more we can do that, the better. So we have just a couple of minutes. What I would love to hear today was such an amazing conversation. Thank you. We have 3 brave vixens on today because, you know, a lot of people don't like talking about money. I was a financial advisor for 16 years, so it kind of comes natural to me, but I just want to share in the right circles, be careful who you share your story with, right? As Brene Brown says, not everyone deserves to know your story, but in the right circles, other women on the same journey, other entrepreneurs, friends that you can trust, right? And sometimes your friends and family are not that safe space. It's hard to understand that, but we got to know the more comfortable you get with talking about money, understanding your pricing and your economics of your business, the more successful you're going to become because it removes the emotion, it removes the worry, and you get very present about the reality and you just deal with it. So I want to thank you all for coming on and discussing this topic and helping our audience, you know, kind of wrestle with their pricing and charging issues. But before we go, I'd love to hear, what do you have going on in your business right now? I know, Amanda, you have an amazing freebie that has to do with pricing that you'd love to offer our audience. But what are you excited with, you know, here in the month of September that's going on in your business, or what are you offering to your clients currently?
Love it. So I'm really excited about expanding the Experts Network. So that's a coaching community and a curriculum. And of course, you have the mentorship in there. And so I've been really focused on serving in there, you know, recruiting folks that are the right fit for that. And we're pumped because we're going to be hosting a workshop at the beginning of October. So we're busy this particular month, but it's a lot of fun.
Love it. And Kay, how about you?
In September, I'm hosting a couple workshops myself. And so one will be online, and then I have another one here locally in Montana. And they're both about redefining your own success as a creative CEO, which I feel like is a bit of a hurdle sometimes.
I love it. And Sarah?
I am focused on holiday party packages, and I set a goal for myself for how many holiday parties I want to book, and I am 20% there. So I would love it if you're planning a holiday party, particularly in the state of Texas, reach out.
Love it. Thank you so much. And Amanda, tell us about your pricing guide that you're offering our listeners today.
Yeah. So when we were getting ready for this podcast, I was like, April, can I please? And thank you so much for the opportunity. So many people have been asking, how do I price appropriately? And especially right now, if you are thinking about having something like a lower ticket membership, or you're charging for workshops and you're trying to balance that with maybe more premium things like we've been talking about mostly in this episode, I wrote a pricing guide for my community, the Experts Network, and I have it for free. So you can DM me the word pricing April so that I know, or pricing Vixen so that I know that you heard it from this podcast. My Instagram is the Amanda Kaufman. That's 1F, 1N. And I've already sent it actually to your team, so it should be below this episode.
Awesome. We will share that in the show notes. Thank you so much, Amanda. That's super generous. I love it. It's the ripple effect. How can we impact more women to live their best life, make the most money, have the most joy, love the most? That is what we're about here at the Vixen Gathering. And also in the show notes, you will get all the information. I'm sure you want to stay in touch with all of these amazing women here today. So go follow them, see what they have to say. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the Vixen Voice on our website, vixengathering.com, you can subscribe. And every Tuesday and Thursday, we will send these resources to your inbox. So really great things coming out. Resources that our guests share, that we share as we're growing our business. So you definitely want to tap into that. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. I love this conversation. I love the thoughtfulness and the heart that each of you put into this topic, because pricing can be a scary topic for many female entrepreneurs. And I love how real we were able to get. So everyone out there, as you know, I always say the world needs more love. So one way you can love each other is by sharing things like we talked about today, right? Having real deep conversations that matter, in my opinion, is one of the greatest forms of love we can have, and not judging other people by what they say or have to share. So thanks for tuning in today. I hope we helped you with your pricing scenarios or how to charge your worth. Have a fantastic day, and I'll talk to you soon.